After 5 strong years bringing you news and stories from around New England, we're sunsetting the show. I'm excited to welcome Vanessa de la Torre to talk about the decision. She's the executive editor of Next and of the New England News Collaborative, and is one of the key people behind the scenes making this show possible. Hey, Vanessa.
Hey, Morgan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. You know, Next is one aspect of the New England News Collaborative's work. So can you talk about what the collaborative is?
Yeah, sure. So, the quick and easy answer is that we're a regional news partnership of 10 public media stations that span all of New England. But what that really means is that we're able to bring you regional news consistently in a way that no one else can. And what we've been able to do on Next is showcase some of the best of that journalism.
Are there any highlights that stand out for you in the past year and a half that we've worked together?
Well, how about I ask you that first, Morgan, because you've been the best host that we could have asked for. Really thoughtful. You've been a neighbor to us really throughout this whole pandemic. And I was actually curious if I could ask you that. What are some of the highlights for you working on Next over the past year and a half?
Yeah, throwing it back to me. So, when I think of the past year and a half, some of the highlights are, I really loved talking to authors and creative types on the show from around New England. Specifically, Jennifer De Leon comes to mind. Portia Oleyiwola was so fun to talk to. This dates back to before the pandemic, but I do have this memory of really early on when I started hosting, being in the studio and trying to what we call tracking, which is voicing the things that you hear in the show. And I remember Katie she's the executive producer of the show, just saying, "Whoa, what is going on with you? You are so hyper. Just calm down. Take a deep breath." So there are those moments behind the scenes where you just look at yourself and you're like, what are you doing right now? Why are you so amped up? But those are kind of the moments that stick in your mind. I had to work through that to get to the point where you try to, be a calmer, communicative presence on the air. So, okay, back at you, Vanessa.
Okay. Some of the best moments for me, there are so many to choose from, but I would say probably our Racism in New England series. This was 4 radio specials we produced last fall with America Amplified. Really sensitive topic, of course, but we thought it was so important to bring this conversation in the form of 4 radio specials. And we actually found out later on that a couple of community groups in northern New England, I believe including Portland, Maine, took this series as a launching pad to have some really important community conversations. And when I think about our impact as a New England News Collaborative, this is one of the ways that we can do that. And we plan on more of these sorts of regional specials in the future, for sure.
The decision to end Next was not made quickly or taken lightly. Talk about this choice.
Yeah, I mean, we've loved producing Next. We recently produced our 250th episode. We're really proud of the work we've done. We think it's informative, it's public service journalism, and we have some really beautiful storytelling from the journalists within the collaborative. The fact is that as a collaborative, we've grown from where we were 5 years ago when we started this show and this collaborative. Right before the pandemic, we expanded to 10 stations. So right there, we have new leadership, new voices at the table, and we're asking ourselves, how can we have the greatest impact? What can we do together that we can't accomplish alone? And we think when it comes down to it, we have a really tremendous opportunity here to accelerate the work we're doing as a collaborative. We just need the headspace and the time to focus on these new initiatives, in our minds, to serve as many people as we can in New England.
What are some of those priorities moving forward?
Right. So first of all, we want to bring you more regional news on the radio day to day. Radio's our bread and butter. We know that. We're going to build on that and produce more original collaborative stories out of New England. But we also have to meet people where they are, and that includes more journalism on video, social media, digital platforms, in addition to radio. We think this is one of the big opportunities and challenges, to be honest, that we face in public media, and it's how do we stay relevant and push ourselves? Because we want to be here, we want to be thriving 20, 50 years from now, so we have to think about those other ways that we can bring the news to people across New England and across the country. So as part of that, we also want to make sure that the voices you hear in our work are reflective of the diversity that's growing in New England. We need to do better on this, full stop. We think strengthening our focus on diversity and inclusivity will make our journalism stronger, better, and this is central to our vision moving forward, for sure.
Vanessa, last week when we announced that Next was ending, we got this message from Chris Grather, who lives in Connecticut.
When I heard that Next is going to be ending, my first reaction was, what? I have very much valued Next as a focus on New England and Connecticut as part of New England. I think there should be more focus on that, and I'm sad to see the podcast go.
So with that in mind, how can listeners continue to hear stories about the region from the New England News Collaborative?
Right. So I'm glad that Chris decided to call in, because it gives us an opportunity to say, so many of the stories you hear on Next come from these hardworking, talented local stations that produce this sort of work every day. And so if you're in New England, you'll continue to hear these stories on your local air as part of the New England News Collaborative. We'll also have stories on demand on our website. That's nenc.news. And on top of that, we'll be working on some new initiatives in the coming months.
Vanessa de la Torre is the executive editor of Next and the New England News Collaborative. Vanessa, it's so good to have you on the air and to work with you, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Maureen. You're the best.